welcome to a tutorial on Photoshop Surrealism, and today we're just going to do a quick example, not so quick example. We're going to take this eyeball, which we shot in class. This was a student's eye, and we also took this picture. We took that picture, but we took this picture of a student's hand, and we're going to make that hand look like it's coming out of this eye. It's going to be quite spooky. This one, we're also going to save this. This is going to be in another tutorial. Now, it's important to note that when I shot this shot and I shot this shot, I used the same environment, the same lights, and they were shot right at the same time. And the idea was to hopefully have the same lighting, the same kind of coloring, the same angles, so when this gets put into there, it actually looks like it somewhat belongs, not that having an eye coming out of or a hand coming out of an eyeball belongs at all. So what I've done in order to save a little bit of time, you'll see in my layers here, this is the hand, this is the original photo, but I've already cropped it out. So if I wipe that out, I've got that cropped out. In fact, I've even cropped out the fingers here as well separately, like so. And the idea behind that is that these fingers are going to be coming out on top, which is, think of it like the foreground, and then you're going to have your eyelid, and then this part, the back part of the hand, is going to be in the background. And it makes life easier, so I'll explain as we go. So I'm just going to take these two layers, holding down the Shift key so I can select both layers. I'm going to take those layers, I'm going to drag them over to the eyeball here, and then all of a sudden they show up. So we got all that's working pretty nice. Now, just to get my position here, I'm going to, you can see how the lighting works really well. Like all the pinks are kind of the same, and that's on purpose. So I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. I'm going to take this hand one, and I'm going to back the opacity off so it's semi-transparent, so we can kind of see where things are going to belong. And I've got, if I have both layers selected, again holding down the Shift key to select them both, and I go Image and Free Transform and Control T, then I can, it's going to transform both those layers. So I'm going to shrink those down until they kind of look like they're in a spot where they, Control T, where they're in a spot where they kind of fit. This pinky's going to be a bit of a problem. So I'm just going to do it like as if for those guys there. Not going to worry about the thumb. Thumb won't be in there. And then hit OK. Oh, here's an announcement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this finger here, and just working in this one, I'm going to fudge that. Going to pretend, actually I'm going to do it in a separate layer. I'm going to cut it, Control X, and then Control V. And I'm just going to put it in. Well, I put it in its own layer just because it gives me a little bit more flexibility with it. I can change my mind as well. That doesn't look right, so I'm going to take that one finger and put it in behind that, and then maybe rotate it. So that just gives me a little bit more flexibility that way. Okay. So now let's zoom in. And okay, so now if I make this 100%, the back part of the hand 100%, we have to get rid of this hand. Now I could go through and I could very carefully just try and delete this, but that is, it doesn't allow me to be very flexible. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a foreground, midground, and background. So the fingers are going to be in the foreground. The bottom lip of the eye is going to be in the midground, and this is going to be in the background. And that will allow me to just be really flexible with how I put stuff. So I'm just going to get rid of that, and I'm just going to get my outline. And so I'm going to do this real quick. I could use the lasso tool, which I might still, or I could use the polygon lasso tool if it was all straight lines, which it's not. But I think I'm going to use this quick selection tool because I am trying to be quick. So I'm just going to go along here, and oh, do you see what it did there? It selected, it went all wonky because I had the wrong layer selected. Let's get rid of it. Make sure I have that layer selected and go along, and it's just going to select along there. The quick selection tool, again, is a good way of obviously selecting something real quick. However, I'm not a fan of it for if I actually want to do a quality job. So I'm going to go hold down the Alt key, and it will take away from here. Oh, and let's fudge that up. Okay. All right, so let's zoom back here, and then I'm just going to use the regular lasso tool in order to add on to that selection. So then we're going to click there, go all the way around, so when the two endpoints meet, and again I've got the Shift key held down, then it's just one big selection. Okay? So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, so Edit, Copy, and paste it back down. Oh, that moved a little bit. I'm just going to nudge it back. All right. Okay. So so now we've got this lip right here that's been selected. So what that allows me to do is I've got the hand here. I'm going to drop this part of the hand in behind, like so. So now, we'll get rid of that. I'll just get rid of that finger. There we go. So why do I do that? Because now if I select this plus that extra finger there, oops, holding down the control key as well as the background, what that allows me to do is that allows me to then move things around and just kind of finesse them a little bit. So again, it gives me a little bit more flexibility. Okay, so then I do still see a problem that we've got here with this finger. I'm going to nudge that up a little bit, and then we will just going to have to take some of that background. And so in order to fix that background, let's get rid of this so we can see this. All I'm going to do is maybe take some of this here, copy it, wrong layer, get it from there, copy and paste it. I'm going to throw it underneath there. And we're going to add a little bit of shading. You know what? I don't like that. I'm actually going to take it from here because that makes more sense. I'm going to take that from there and copy and paste it and then throw that in behind. And that makes way more sense. Okay. So then when we have that there, then that makes more sense. Okay. So now when we throw the background, because this lip is in the exactly over top of that, it looks like the hand is coming out now. Now it's starting to look okay, but in order to make these things to look like they're floating, they need shading or shadows, because otherwise it just doesn't look like it belongs. We need to make it look like it's actually real, and shadows are a huge part of that. So let's make a new layer. And I'm going to call it, here I went over this screen, I'm going to call it shadow, and then it just shows up there. Now, rather than making a black shadow, what I'm going to do is just take like a sample of the color up here, go to our eyedropper tool, because this is an example of something that's dark in the shadows, so why wouldn't I use that color? That just makes so much sense. And use my brush tool right here, and we're going to make that brush a little bit bigger. The hardness is set at 0. I can make my brush bigger this way, or I can use my square brackets to make them, oops, that's okay. There we go. So then just make it bigger this way. So let's zoom into this area. Now, if I were to have my brush at 100%, it would color in like that. But I'm going to back off my brush strength, the opacity of it, to about there, and that way that allows me to build on top of things. So let's undo that. And then I'm just going to start drawing it by hand. I got to draw it by hand because this lip here is so, it's not as if I can do like a drop shadow or anything. It's going to look fake. I got to do it by hand in order to make it look somewhat realistic. So I'm just going to start. And now you'll notice though, I'm going to do this. Okay. Now you'll notice this is on top. This layer is on top. I need to put that layer underneath. So it's on underneath this layer, but on top of the lip of the eyeball. I'm going to set that for maybe about 25, maybe get a little bit more going here. Not bad. Maybe I'm going to use the sample of maybe that color there. And then what I can do too, in order to richen up the shadow color, I like to usually multiply that color just with the blending options. Multiply really richens it up. And if you go too deep, you can always back off the opacity of that layer now. So let's just actually just make some, okay, and I'm just click, 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 click. You might be able to hear it. And I'm just giving something for it to sit on. As well, in behind here would be dark because this is casting a shadow over here. Okay. Alright. That just makes a lot more sense. And I think that this, by far, adds a heck of a lot more, makes things seem a lot more sense. So if you don't have that, that's the way it looks. And right there, automatically huge. Might add a little bit more shadowing in between the fingers. I'm going to make a new layer. Do I? No, I don't, actually I don't need to. I'm just going to, I just need to have it right there. Just a little bit, make that smaller. This is where you start getting artsy, and this is where I start to get where I just can't leave things alone. One thing that is bothering me about this is that I have this edge here that's actually really terrible. I think what I'm going to do is, here's a little trick. If I hold down the control key and I click here, it turns whatever the contents of this layer is into a selection. Pretty snazzy. Then I think what I'm going to do is just move that selection over. So you can actually move that selection just over. I just use the arrow keys to nudge it. And then turn my selection inside out. Oh, wrong layer. There. And there. So I just chopped off that. So, let's move it some more. I really want to get rid of that. I want it just to make it solid highlights. And I think that makes it look like it's a lot more sense. I'm going to just do the same thing. Control click on that. Let's see, then turn my selection inside out by inversing it. So now everything except that is... Now I'm really kind of going a little too far with it at this point. I realize that. And then I'm just, actually I'll just use the eraser tool. There we go. And then this one is I realize that I take things a little too far sometimes, but that looks a lot better. That edge there looks a lot better. I just couldn't handle it. Okay, so that's an example of surrealism. Surrealism is is like kind of like a juxtaposition of images. It's things that kind of don't belong, but using Photoshop, we kind of make them a reality. So there you go. Good luck with your assignment.